This summer, the world's greatest athletes are competing on the global stage in front of an audience of billions. They've been training their whole lives for this moment, and now you get the chance to hear their stories up close and personal. This is Nike On Air, a series about elite athletes brought to you by Nike. You'll hear from the world's fastest woman, Tatiana McFadden, the breakout breaking star, Sunny Choi, basketball legend Dawn Staley, and more. Listen to Nike On Air starting July 7th, only on the Womanica podcast feed. Hello, from Wonder Media Network, I'm Jenny Kaplan, and this is Womanica. This month, we're celebrating the women who performed physical and mental feats in sports. They overcame societal barriers, personal struggles, and fierce competition to pursue their dreams of glory. We're talking about athletes. Today, we're talking about a woman who rejected the Olympic Committee's sexism to become the first woman to complete the marathon at the modern Olympic Games. Let's talk about Stamata Revithi. Little is known about the events leading up to the moment that put Stamata Revithi's name in the history books. And we don't know much about what happened after it either. We do know she was born on the Greek island of Syros in the mid-19th century, and that she spent much of her life in poverty. Stamata had 2 children, though one died in childhood. At the time of the 1896 Olympics, she was around 30 years old, but she looked much older. Her hair was still blonde and her body was wiry, but she had premature wrinkles and tired, sunken eyes. After losing her first child, Stamata was determined to create a better life for her 17-month-old. And that's what brought her to Athens. The city was in the midst of a renovation. People were busy rebuilding and preparing to welcome guests from all over the world for the first modern Olympic Games. This included renovating the Panathenaic Stadium, which could hold up to 80,000 people. Athletes geared up to compete in 43 events, including the first ever marathon run, which was a 40-kilometer race from the town of Marathon to Athens. The Greeks were particularly excited about this event. According to its origin story, an Athenian soldier ran this route during the Battle of Marathon in 490 BCE to declare victory against the Persians. But only men were allowed to compete in the games. Baron Pierre de Coubertin, the founder of the International Olympic Committee, prohibited women from participating. He said that women's sports were, quote, impractical, uninteresting, unaesthetic, and we are not afraid to add, incorrect. Such would be, in our opinion, this female half-Olympiad. During Stamata's journey to Athens, she met a fellow traveler who told her about the marathon and the prize for winning. Stamata saw what winning could mean for her and her child. So she made it her mission to run the marathon. She believed she was fully capable of completing the race and also beating many of the men. She boldly approached the organizing committee and asked that they let her run. The committee used the excuse that the registration deadline had passed. Stamata decided she would try her luck anyway. The night before the race, the runners gathered in the village of Marathon. Stamata was there because she had camped out near the race's starting point. Journalists took great interest in speaking with her. When asked if she'd run to Athens, Stamata responded, "I will compete. If the committee does not allow me to run with the other runners, I will follow behind." When they asked her how long it would take, she said, 3.5 hours. It may be even less. I saw in a dream that I had an apron full of gold and gilded sugared almonds. Who knows? My heart is in it. I suppose my feet will hold. Stamata showed up the next morning ready to run, but she was turned away. The committee told her she could compete the next week with a group of American women who'd shown interest in running. Of course, that race never happened. On April 11, 1896, the day after the men competed, Stamata returned to the race's starting point. She was going to run the marathon alone. She had the schoolmaster, the mayor, and the magistrate of Marathon sign a document that stated her start time. And at 8 a.m., dressed in her undergarment lifted to her knees, with her hands at her waist, Stamata set out for Athens. 5.5 hours later, she arrived, covered in sweat and dust. She wasn't allowed to cross the finish line in the stadium, but she was able to find witnesses to sign the document verifying her run time. When those around asked why she ran all that way, Stamata responded, "So that the king might award a position to my child." There are no records or reports of Stamata's life after the race. There are some reports of a woman named Melpomene, who allegedly ran from Marathon to Athens in 4.5 hours during the Olympic trials. One Olympic historian believes that Melpomene and Stamata were the same person. Although Stamata's name is often overlooked in Olympic history, her decision to run the race alone inspired generations of women runners to come. It would take another 88 years after Stamata's race for women to be officially allowed to run in the Olympic marathon. In 1984, Joan Benoit won the first women's Olympic marathon in 2 hours and 24 minutes. All month, we're talking about athletes. For more information, find us on Facebook and Instagram at Womanica Podcast. Special thanks to Liz Kaplan, my favorite sister and co-creator. Talk to you tomorrow.